The problem with unwinding. There are many obstacles that can make it challenging to unwind, relax, and just rest. These include busy schedules, work, family, social responsibilities, technology, things going on in your head, pain, you name it, it exists. But now you can get clarity on what these things are, how to deal with them, and how to properly address them. Stay tuned right now.
The problem with unwinding. Unfortunately, unwinding doesn't always come easy. For one thing, the process itself isn't always valued. Many cultures heavily emphasize accomplishment but take a very brutal stance when it comes to downtime. Moments that you're not getting things done can feel like laziness or even weakness on the part of the individual. Thankfully, this isn't the case everywhere. Many people in recent times have begun to think of it as flawed thinking, especially with so many scientific studies in recent years placing importance on the act of unwinding. Suppose you've been told these things, especially by authority figures in your life such as parents or teachers. In that case, you might have to make a conscious effort to remind yourself of just how important unwinding is to your well-being. The other problem we have has more to do with the reasons we need to unwind in the first place. Stress, worry, and overwhelm are insidious. You can find these emotions everywhere. They come about from internal sources, such as feelings of guilt or depression, or they come from external circumstances, like having to work too many hours to make ends meet. It's no wonder we can very easily feel trapped by these emotions. To understand this better, let's look at each emotion separately and see where it comes from and how it fits together with the idea of unwinding. Stress. Why do we struggle so much with stress? You think today's modern world was designed to make things easier? We certainly don't have to work anywhere near as hard as our ancestors did to keep ourselves housed or fed, right? Or do we? There are a lot of factors that influence our levels of stress. It's interesting to note that these things will vary from person to person. For example, the idea of public speaking might be extremely stressful to some individuals, while for others, it's something they love doing. To understand this better, let's first define what stress is. Simply put, stress is the feeling we don't have what we need at this moment to deal with whatever is going on in our lives. So the person who dreads public speaking might feel stressed out because they're not confident about what they're going to say or worried they wouldn't be able to stand up to criticism if the audience disagrees with them. The person without stress might feel better prepared or less worried about audience response. It also explains why stress is different for everyone. We all have areas of competency unique to ourselves. We also bring to the table different gifts, abilities, and resources. So you might be stressed you can't pay the rent next month because your bank account is empty. But someone else might not have this stress because they have funds already set aside for this expense. The problem with stress is it can crop up anywhere. We'll all have parts of our lives where we feel unsure, empty-handed, without what we need to get by, or are simply lost. There's never enough time, money, or helping hands when we need them. Add to this the seemingly random nightmares we're forced to deal with, such as car accidents or the loss of a loved one. It feels like it would take a miracle not to be experiencing at least some level of stress in your life this very minute. Worse, stress can make us feel trapped. While we might be very adept at seeing the problem, we don't always know the solution or how to find one. So for the person who can't pay their rent, they might stay stressed out over weeks if they can't find a job or some other means to pay the money on time for their landlord. Now add in a time component. The longer certain stresses go on, the worse they feel. Going back to the person who can't pay the rent, consider the difference in their stress levels on the first day of the month versus the last day. Day 1. Situation: the renter knows they'll be short $200 for rent at the end of the month. Strategy to solve: find a different job, borrow funds, ask for help from charities for rent assistance. Stress level: still moderately hopeful, not too high yet. Day 15. Situation: the renter knows they'll still be short $200 for rent at the end of the month. Strategy so far: no new job yet, but still applying. Friends have already said no. Rent assistance is in process with no word of when they'll hear back. Stress level: moving toward panic. As the renter sees doors closing and time running out, stress at this point could be keeping them up nights. They might be experiencing an upset stomach and other problems. By the end of the month, the situation could be untenable. If the money isn't there and options have run out, the stress would be so overwhelming the person experiencing the situation will be experiencing both physical and mental overload. If they have any ongoing health problems, those things will be flaring by now. Mental health might feel precarious, especially as the situation gets more desperate. Depression or panic might have set in, unless they can unwind somehow. The problem with constant stress is we don't always recognize just how important unwinding can be to the situation. For example, how would taking some time off to relax help out with the imaginary rent problem? The answer is simpler than you might expect. Should our individuals get some downtime, they can come back at the problem with a fresh perspective. Maybe this will help them see a different job opportunity or find another solution altogether they hadn't thought of before. They'll be better able to problem solve, have more energy to engage in potential solutions, and have the impetus needed to carry out their plan. This is the beauty of unwinding. It won't make the stress go away, but it'll certainly help you sort out the reasons for the stress and figure out where to go. Worry. With worry, the situation is somewhat different. Worry takes us into the future, exploring the fears of what might happen. Worry can be good sometimes, as it helps us prepare and make contingency plans. For example, if you live in an area where wildfires are common, a little worry might be the impetus to create a family safety plan, including working out details about where you would go if evacuated and what you would need to take. Worry becomes a problem, though, when you find you're in a perpetual state of fear about what's going to happen next. There's another problem linked with this. Worry comes in two very distinct forms: unfounded fears and reasonable concern. Unfounded fears mean you worry about things that probably won't happen. Worrying you're going to have a heart attack when you have a clean bill of health might be an unfounded fear. A reasonable concern is a worry which has some basis in reality. You might be worried about having a heart attack because you have a strong family history of heart disease, for example. Now let's add one more complication to the mix. Sometimes we get unfounded fears mixed up with a reasonable concern, and it becomes hard to tell one from the other. It generally happens when something used to be a reasonable concern but no longer is. In our previous example, you might have a family history of heart disease, which made the fear of a heart attack a reasonable concern. But you've done what you can to mitigate the situation by changing your diet, exercising, and visiting your doctor regularly to monitor your heart. This worry of a heart attack now seems to fall into a gray area. Is it something to worry about or not? The answer to these questions can be complicated, making worry not so simple to let go of. Like stress, you can feel trapped by worry, which builds further anxiety. Here is where unwinding comes to the rescue one more time. And the problem? It's hard to let go of enough worry to unwind fully. We tend to cling to fears, which is part of the whole fight or flight thing that tries to rule so much of our lives. We needed worry back in the days of our ancestors, as worry is what helped us plan for the future and keep us safe from predators. Stepping back feels downright dangerous, doesn't it? Not at all. Unwinding allows you to start thinking again so you can regain your perspective. When you're not being eaten alive by worry, you can take the time to ask the question, is this a reasonable worry? And be capable of figuring out the answer. The problem is, sometimes our worries are reasonable. To someone with a cancer diagnosis or other complicated problem, worry comes naturally as breathing. Here too, unwinding has an answer. You give yourself room to figure out the next steps by laying aside your worry. You can learn to look at the future without flinching and even decide how you want to face the crisis. Isn't it better to take control of what you can and, yes, let go of the rest? As a side note, sometimes our worry is really anxiety in disguise. When this is the case, it can become fairly impossible to figure out what exactly is the root of your worry. Despite this, unwinding can help here too. The process is this kind of deep relaxation tends to erase anxiety, if not completely, enough so you can deal with the effects of it. Overwhelm. How much is too much? Welcome to the world of overwhelm. Overwhelm comes about when we're trying to do too many things, but without the benefit of having enough time, energy, or resources to get everything done. Sounds like a losing proposition? It is, yet we continue to do it to ourselves over and over again. Of course, some overwhelm is normal. Everyone has days where the unexpected occurs, or we wind up with too much on our plate. The problems occur when this becomes a chronic condition. If you're feeling overwhelmed most days of the week, something needs to change. The obvious answer would be to not allow yourself to get overwhelmed in the first place. This solution isn't always practical, though. We get busy at work, our children come up with a last-minute project for school, or you just have one of those days where you're not getting much done, and now tomorrow is looking super busy to make up for it. Now, add to all this the other factors which weigh into being overwhelmed. Some of the more common reasons include you thought you could get more done than you actually could and now aren't making your deadlines. You've been getting notifications all day on your phone or are distracted by other things like kids or coworkers. You're always pulled in different directions. You're not using the power of no and agree to everything. You don't have energy reserves because you haven't been eating right or sleeping well and dragging all day. You overbooked yourself again. But is any of this that much of a problem? While overwhelm might not seem as serious as stress or worry, this kind of pressure to always be on the go leads to many really big problems down the road. Exhaustion destroys your immune system and makes it harder to think or even function. Always feeling behind can leave feelings of not being good enough or up to the challenge, leading to problems with self-esteem and depression. Missed deadlines cause anxiety, and all of this leads right into stress. This reality means that overwhelm can become a contributing factor to all the other problems discussed here. Worse, you can feel trapped in overwhelm very easily as you become so trapped by your responsibilities, there seems like there's no possible way to meet your obligations. Unwinding seems to be an odd answer, though, doesn't it? When you unwind from overwhelm, you're taking a hard look at what you can and can't do. It can only happen when you step far enough back from the problem to see the forest and not just the trees. Unwinding gives you the headspace to decide what should stay on your schedule and, more importantly, what should go. It restores your ability to work with the projects you need to keep and quit stressing over everything else. It also reminds you to break up things into steps and do things one at a time. Here's where all three of these ideas come together. With stress, worry, and overwhelm, the power of unwinding is crucial to your success. Unwinding gives you a chance to breathe and restore yourself. Here you can finally take care of yourself properly, take a nap if needed, and grab a healthy snack. Unwinding tells you you're important enough to deserve time just for you, because there will be nothing left to unwind without you.